Hey everybody, I'm Dirty Dan and welcome back to Greasy Boy Customs. Today, we're going to build a hot rod. Now, when it comes to building a hot rod, a lot of first-timers and veterans are drawn to the Model A platform simply because they're easy to get parts for in the aftermarket, they are fun to build, and they look cool. Really damn cool when they're done right. So this one behind me is a 31 Ford truck cab. Now, this is an original one from 1931, and for the most part, it's in pretty good shape. There's some sheet metal work that'll need to be done to it, and we're going to be making some upgrades and possibly giving it a little bit of a haircut on the top if we're lucky. Now, the frame that I'm sitting on, this is a Pete and Jake's frame. This is designed for this application. The great thing about this is they've taken the guesswork out. It's already got mounts for the Chevrolet drivetrain that's going in here. It's already got the mounts on the rear and the front for the suspension bars to bolt to. They have already got the rear end and the carrier is assembled and ready to go. The axle shafts are ready to be installed. All this is already ready to go. It's kind of like putting a plastic model car together, but a little more expensive and a lot cooler because you get to drive it and do burnouts with it. Now, today's episode, we're going to be looking at the suspension components, assembling them, and getting them installed to where it's pretty much a roller or as close to possible as we can. So I'll show you what parts we have, and then we'll start slapping this thing together. The rear, we do have our 9-inch housing. We have our center section, the needed hardware and gasket. And we also have our axle shafts. These are already together, ready to go with studs. This pile of parts, look at all these bars. Now, our customer already did a lot of this prep work. He has already painted a lot of this stuff with the chassis black, including the steering mechanisms and the axle. So that's great. I mean, we're going to be blowing it back apart anyway, but it's good to get a head start on all of that. These are all your suspension link bars. There's a lot of bushings we're going to have to install in there. You have your axle, your spring, your spindles, you've got your gearbox, rotors, and a whole big box full of hardware. We're going to start with the rear suspension and getting this axle together. We're going to start off by installing the carrier. Now, there is a gasket in place, and I did put a little bead of RTV on there as well, just to help with the sealing. You don't have to use the gasket. You can use just RTV or just the gasket, but I find it works best when you use both or just the RTV. We did have to tap it a little bit. If you have to hit it any harder than a couple light taps, it's probably not lined up right. Pop it back out, reset. Then we're going to move on to tightening the bolts. Now, again, we're just running these down snug because we may have to remove some of them later. We're going to take our seal driver kit from Orion Motor Tech and go ahead and drive these seals in. Make sure they are bottomed out all the way. There we go. Dink. And at the bottom. Now we're going to move on to our backing plates. This is great. These were already pre-assembled. Just make sure that the short shoe is facing forward and go ahead and mount it on the 4 T-bolts that mount through the back of the axle flange. There is an O-ring on the axle bearing. Put a little bit of lube on there to help with the install. You may have to tap it in a little bit with a hammer. If you don't feel confident with a hammer and you're worried you're going to ding up the axle, feel free to use a dead blow or put a block of wood in between. This way you don't damage the end of it. Then we're going to need to install our lock plate you see on the floor there by my knee. That is going to slide over the 4 bolts that hold the backing plate on. And then you use the hole in the flange to tighten these 4 bolts. Again, we're just going to go ahead and run them down for now because we may have to remove something later. This is just a mock-up situation. Now we do the same procedure on the passenger side. And once we get that all locked in, we can move on to installing our brake drum. The brake drums again came with the kit and they slide right on beautifully, and there we go. We have an assembled axle. These are your rear 4-link bars. Now they come disassembled. The bigger bars, bigger diameter bars, those are your rear ones. There's 4 matching. You can see they have this right-hand thread bushing on the end. Now it does not come with the bushings in there. Looks like that, but they're not hard to install. They literally just push in by hand. Put one on each side. And then you're going to drive the bushing into place, the steel bushing. Let's see here. There we go. I'm doing this one-handed, but not doing too bad so far. And then just drive her home. There we go. Now, you just got to do all four, like we've already done. I like to set these about middle. Screw these in about halfway. Don't forget your jam nuts. And they should be close to the same length. And then we're going to go ahead and mock these up. Also pay attention, if you look right here, you can see that they have a little bit of a slant to them. They don't go just anywhere. They have specific homes. Now we're going to go ahead and start assembling our front axle. We've got the bat wing slid into place, and we're going to slide our axle perches down through the bottom. These are later going to hold on our lower shock mounts. A quick little trick for making the spring easier to install is take a C-clamp and a block of wood and tighten it down and use that to spread the leaf spring out. This makes it a little bit easier to install, at least get you to where you can manhandle it into place. Then we're going to go ahead and use our pliers just to squeeze it in all the way and go ahead and get it locked in. There are plates that go on the back side of these two bolts with retaining nuts. We're going to go ahead and run these down so our spring is locked into place. Now we can go ahead and remove that block of wood and the C-clamp, and this will let the spring relax into place. And then once we go ahead and get everything bolted up and underneath, you'll see how the spring acts and how the perches move. Now we're going to pick this big boy up. It's not super light, it's not super heavy. If you want to be more careful, get a friend to help you and save yourself a little bit of trouble. This does not have U-bolts. This has a flat plate with a riser on it that holds it up into the right spot, and it's held on with 2 bolts to hold it in place. Neat little setup. Then we're going to go ahead and move on to the spindles. Now, that's upside down, so we're going to flip it around the other way to install it. You can see it was pointing up at a weird angle. You have a flat washer and a felt ring to keep grease from coming out of the top on your kingpin. You'll see a groove cut out in the side of that lines up with that hole in the axle. That's where our lock pin is going to go later. Now, the bearing is going to be installed on the bottom because that's where your weight is going to ride. The bearing has one side that has some numbers stamped on it. That is the side that goes facing up. Now we can go ahead and slide that in and drive it all the way home. This kit does come with shims. If it's a little too loose when you move it around like I'm doing now, then you can add shims to the bottom to snug it up a little bit. Throughout the process, make sure you keep moving the spindle back and forth to make sure it is not binding on anything. Go ahead and drive our lock pin in. And then we're going to go ahead and put the retaining nut on. And this retaining nut was an extra you could buy with the kit. And this is designed to double as an axle stop. And go ahead and hammer that in. Well, we went ahead and got the rest of the front end parts on. The 4 bars in the front, just like we did in the rear, same thing. We did get our steering links on and our shocks. Those are pretty self-explanatory. And then we did go ahead and mount our gearbox. Again, also pretty self-explanatory. The top hole, you do have to drill it out to a little bit bigger. I think it's like a 7/16. Now, we were going to go ahead and get this thing rolling, but I realized I don't have any more small 5-on-4.5 Ford wheels, that bolt pattern that will fit on these. Now, that's one thing you need to keep in mind when you're buying wheels as well. You need to make sure that your wheel is going to clear your caliper and all of your steering components. So for now, I've got some old Buick wheels that are 5-on-5, and I just so happen to have these spacers from Orion Motor Tech. And if you've seen any of my videos in the past, I've actually done some works with them, some videos on some of their products. I actually bought these like a year ago and didn't end up using them, and being a hoarder comes in handy sometimes. So we're going to slap these on, just temporary, and we're going to get a wheel on here so we can roll it around. Let's do it NASCAR style. Don't do this at home, kids. Oh no! I guess I probably should have brought the wheel in with me. Okay. I got a tire now. It won't hold air very well, but whatever. There you go. Rear suspension's in, front suspension's in. Again, this is all just mocked up loosely in place. We're not cranking anything down permanent. We just want to make sure that all the parts are there and that everything fits and lines up as it should before we blow this all back apart when we're done with this to put it all back together for final assembly with everything painted and finished. Now, we still have a couple things to do on the suspension. One of those is the tie rod tube for the front steering. Unfortunately, the threads on one side of the tube were boogered up. They were not cut right, or something happened to them. I'm really not sure. But we weren't able to fix them with the tools we have at hand. So it's a left-hand thread. So we ordered a specific tap for left-hand thread so we can tap that hole out and get it straightened out, hopefully. If that doesn't work, unfortunately, we'll have to send it back. We also need to put the panhard bar on the rear axle. That's pretty simple, self-explanatory. It's just, it bolts on. The picture is very clear, so we're not going to go over that. Now, in the next video, we're going to go ahead and set the engine and transmission in. Hopefully, we'll be working on the brakes and showing you how all that's going to mount. And then we're going to be talking about the cosmetic stuff with the truck. Now, this cab is all stock. We have some sheet metal we need to replace on it. And he does have a bed for it, but we just don't have it here with us right now. I would like to chop this top, but I also am kind of thinking about channeling the body. Those of you who don't know what channeling is, that's where you actually cut the body out so the body slides down over the frame so it appears that it's sitting lower when in fact your suspension's remaining the same. You're just lowering the body down on the frame. A couple downsides to that. One of those downsides is decreased space inside because you're raising your floor up, so less room. And then if you chop the top on top of that, now we're talking about, but we'll talk to the customer and see what he wants to do. So keep that in mind for the next video. If you have any questions about anything we did today or any of the products we used, please feel free to comment below or email us at greasyboycustoms@gmail.com. That is customs with a K. Till next time, happy hot rodding.